So many desires, or as many desires, so many blankets. Covering the radiance of the Spirit. We have to uncover to discover. We have to uncover, discover. We have to uncover, discover.
I'd like to welcome all our listeners who are joining us for Season 2. It's really exciting. Happy New Year to all of you. Those of you who celebrate Makar Sankranti or Lodi or any of these harvest festivals that usually come around in January, I hope you all had a blessed celebration. We have our team of castmates back with us. We all are together today after a good gap, I would say. And we have a very special start to Season 2, as we're going to have a very special guest that we're going to be speaking with in a little bit. But as we always do, we do our introductory prayers. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha. Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sadguru Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Om Sarvamangala Mangalye Shive Sarvartha Sadike Sharanye Trayambake Gauri Narayani Namostute. Om Dum Durgaye Namaha. Om Aim Saraswatye Swaha. Om Shri Mahalakshmi Namaha. Om Shri Mahakalikaye Namaha. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardharam. Urvarukamiva Bandhanan Mrityor Mokshiyamamratat. Om Namah Shivaya. Om Bhur Bhuvaswaha. Om Tatsavitur Varenyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yo Naha Prachodayat. Om Shantakaram Bhujagashayanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasadrusham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmikantam Kamalanayanam Yogi Birthyanagam Vande Vishnum Bhavabhayaharam Sarvalokaikanaatham. Om Shri Mahavishnuve Namaha. Om Namo Narayanaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Pandurangaya. Om Apadam Apahartaram Dataram Sarvasampadam Lokabhiramam Shri Ramam Bhuyo Bhuyo Namamyaham Shri Rama Jai Rama Jai Jai Rama. Om Shri Krishnaya Vasudevaya Hare Paramatmane Pranata Kleshanashaya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Hare Ram 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Thank you. And it's amazing, a great feeling to kickstart Season 2. And on that note, I'd like to rope in Christiane, if she can welcome her back. It's been a good while.
Yes, it's been a while. I was on hiatus. It's wonderful to be back. Thank you for that beautiful invocation. And I can't believe it's been a full year of Divine Discoveries. What a year it's been. And I'd like to wish everyone as well a Happy New Year on our secular calendar. And thank all of our listeners, new and old, and to everyone who's been engaging with us on social media. We can be found on Facebook at Divine Discoveries and Instagram, Divine_Discoveries_108. We still have our dedicated WhatsApp channel. If you search Divine Discoveries, you can find us. And last but not least, our email address remains the same, divinediscoveries108@gmail.com. So please, if you haven't engaged with us, if you have any questions or comments or feedback, we would love to hear from you. And Prat, I will send it back to you.
Thank you. And as Christiane said, we're all on all these platforms, and it's amazing, Christiane, because we've been heard in 35 countries that we know of, nearly 300 different cities around the world.
Wow.
I mean, that's just incredible. I'm really, really thankful to all of those people around the world who took a chance and listened to us. I'm really thankful that we found a way to produce 17 episodes, all on a variety of topics. And, it was really a great learning experience. So, those of you who engaged with us, who found a way to listen to us, who stumbled upon us, whatever it may be, really our utmost heartfelt gratitude to all of you. And thank you for the support. The only thing I would request, you can rate us on these platforms as to how you think this podcast is. And that can help the growth of this podcast in terms of its reach and who all might be inclined to listen to it just by reading your reviews. So, so I really appreciate those of you who can take the time to do that. So those of you who listened to the December episode, we had celebrated or paid homage to the holy Bhagavad Gita, the great wisdom that Lord Krishna gave to Arjuna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, right before the war was about to start. We paid homage by reciting the 9 meditational stanzas or dhyana shlokas. And at that time, I had given you all a preview that a very special guest might be joining us that kind of links the Bhagavad Gita Jayanti with, some discussion on the Bhagavad Gita. So in anticipation of that, we are very fortunate to have that very special guest with us. And for introduction of said guest, I'd like to turn it over to Vikram.
Well, thank you so much. It is extremely my honor and my privilege to introduce Mr. Pramod Mathur. And this is especially important to me because he is also my uncle, my mom's brother, hence the same last name as well. So that's no coincidence. But before we dive into why Pramod Mama, as I call him, is here, I wanted to share a little bit about him. So he was a chemical engineer by training. After 40 years with a major chemical corporation as a global technology leader, he has dedicated his retirement to another passion of his, which is religion and religious studies. He was born in India and educated in the US. And of particular note, he has taught the Bhagavad Gita to various groups and believes that the teachings of the Gita are of tremendous value in today's world. And he has 3 children and 4 grandchildren and is a resident of Wilmington, Delaware. And so with that, heartiest welcome to Pramod Mama to join us today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that introduction, which wasn't necessary, but that's okay. And I'm excited. I was telling Pratt earlier that I've heard a couple of these earlier, and I'm kind of excited to be part of this. That's fantastic. Should be fun.
Yes,
absolutely.
I just wanted to extend my welcome as well and my gratitude for Pramod Uncle to make the time. And we're going to be speaking about his book, Mission Possible, which gives us, very simple explanation of something so profound. The wisdom is so profound and sometimes complex to understand, but he's broken it down in such a wonderful way, relatable way, giving such wonderful examples, analogies. What I really loved about it wasn't just him saying, this is how I understand this verse, but he also tied in sources like great saints or the Ramayana or, some scripture or the other to really, expand or, if you will, accentuate the point that particular verse is trying to get the reader to understand or the seeker to understand. So I really had a wonderful time reading this book. I'm still reading it, but, so far what I have read has really helped me a lot. And it's not my first time reading the Bhagavad Gita, but I would say the relatability or the level of understandability that I got from it was really awesome. And I really want to commend Pramod Uncle. Hearty congratulations on this book. And we'll speak more about the book in a bit, but I just wanted to let the audience know why we're engaging in this discussion with you. It's our pleasure at Divine Discoveries to have you on the show. So thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, to kick off the discussion, this is actually a question that in all my lifetime I've never asked you, and I thought this was a great time to ask. But what was that moment or phase in your life when you decided to turn more deeply towards a spirituality?
A little bit about my background then, huh? Okay, so this goes back to the 90s, I would say, is that I worked for chemical corporation DuPont, throughout my career. And DuPont used to transfer people around for development and whatnot, which was a great thing in terms of personal growth and career growth and whatnot. And we were in West Virginia in a small town where there weren't that many Indian families. And we all had small kids. We used to get together, like maybe 20, 25 Indian families. We used to get together. And when we used to get together, always used to talk about the fact our kids are so small. We're in a small town. There's no way to expose them to religion or Indian heritage or anything like that, because there's no temple here. There's no infrastructure for any of that. We all used to violently agree with each other. And then the party would be over, we'd go back home. Then we'll meet again a week or two later. Again, we talk about the same topic and we violently agree with them. Go back home. So this went on for some time. And then one day, one of the people called me and said, so Pramod, when are you starting a satsang group or a religious group? I said, me? You're asking me when I am the minister? Why are you picking on me? Or get somebody else. Make a long story short, this person insisted that I started and lead it. And so I started to do that originally with the intent of teaching the children. And the rest is history. I got into, I didn't get into Gita first. I got into the Puran, the Bhagavad Puran first. And from the Bhagavad Puran, it went on to the Gita. Then it went on to the Ramayana, it went on to the Mahabharata, it went on to the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Yoga Vashisht, etc., Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, etc., etc., etc. And so that's how I got into it. When these kids grew up and got into high school, and when they graduated from high school, we as a group give them all a personal copy of the Gita, which these kids still have today after 25, 30 years. And a couple of them have told me that they have found that Gita to be useful. So here's the punchline. When these kids all graduated, here we were older adults starting to become empty nesters. And so we said, well, the kids are gone, so maybe we stop having these meetings. And all the adults said, oh, no. We've enjoyed these as much as the kids. We need to continue this. So we continued doing it. Eventually, I got transferred back to Delaware by DuPont. And then we started a satsang group here. And it's been going on ever since. So I have been teaching Gita now for more than 25 years. I would say it's probably 30 now. And we're still having these. People love it. I love it. So, hey, that's how we got going.
Amazing.
Now, on the subject of Gita, which is the main topic of your book, you studied Gita all these years, and it's not easy to understand all the complexities of the Gita. And what your book seeks to do is to make that easy and distill it for readers. But before this, what existed was the main text and trying to understand it. So when did you know that you had fully imbibed all of the tenets of the Gita, that you've really understood it and could apply it to your life?
The word fully imbibed hasn't happened yet. Okay. I'm still learning. I feel that what I have learned from the Gita has transformed my life. Because a lot of people have asked me, what has the Gita done for you? It has transformed my life. And we can, get into that later. But I feel that there's a lot of stuff in the Gita that applies to everyone. And it's as relevant today as it was 5,000 years ago when it was spoken by Sri Krishna. So I think there's a lot of good information there, regardless of where you are in the spiritual journey, to benefit from.
Wonderful. So I'd like to ask you about the journey of this book. You were teaching the Bhagavad Gita in personal settings or in group settings, but then, you took on this massive task or project, if you will, of writing this book on this profound wisdom. And there have been thousands of books and different versions of it written already. And I'm just wondering about, when did you decide that you wanted to write this book? And if you can take us through that journey of actually writing it, because there was so much research done. As I mentioned, you tied in so many sources to back up what your understanding of it. So I just love to hear about the journey of this book and how you decided, when you decided to write it.
Yeah, really good question. So there were two things that came into play here. One is, a lot of the people that were in my Gita classes would say to me, look, you've been teaching for a long time and we find this thing useful. Wouldn't it be great if you had all this down on a piece of paper? I used to have a lot of these, yellow Post-it notes in my book, right? So like we're reading a particular verse and I put a couple of burger dots. I wanted to make sure that I would cover those points when we're discussing that particular verse. So my book, after a while, was full of Post-its throughout. And people said, if you can take all those Post-its and kind of put prose behind it, number one, it would be retained. And number two, it would document it so that even we can refer to it later on. So I said, that's a good idea. But then the question is, look, like you said, Pratt, a couple of minutes ago, that there are so many Gita books out there. I mean, why would I bother to write another one? Okay, so what's the big deal here? Well, as I thought about it, this is why I decided to write it. I wanted to combine Western experience with Eastern philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And let me explain what I mean by that. So there, like I said, there are many, many Gita books, okay? And I would say almost all of those Gita books have been written by people that are more qualified than me, okay? Been written by Swamis, okay? Swami Chinmayananda, Swami Prabhupada. I can just go down the list.
Yeah.
There's no need to go down the list.
Myriad of them, yeah.
Even former president of India, Radhakrishnan, has written, a treatise on Gita. So why would I bother to write another one? But what I found was, and a lot of people have told me this, is that when somebody from India writes a commentary or gives a talk on the Gita, they're coming at it with an Indian background, Indian culture, Indian train of thought. They even use a lot of words from Indian languages which don't translate directly into English properly, but they'll still use them. And that creates a little bit of a disconnect for people in the West who have been born in the West, who have never lived or grown up in India, and they have trouble connecting to that. Now, in my case, I was born in India. I did my high school in India. But after high school, me and my parents, we moved to the USA, and I spent the rest of my life in the USA. I've been in the USA for 50 years now, even though I'm only 29 years old. You know, I've been in the USA for more than 50 years, and so all my whole career was in the USA. So I understand the Western culture, the Western train of thought, the Western heritage, and so if I can explain these concepts that perhaps grew in India and bring them and apply them to the Western world, especially for those that were born in the US and grew up in the US, maybe there's a gap there that I can fill. And that's what I was trying to do. So also you'll find that my book is not denominational. It doesn't matter whether you are a Shiva devotee or a Krishna devotee or a Ram devotee or whatever. And in fact, it doesn't matter whether you're Dvait or Advait. And a lot of the concepts cut across religions. And I have seen that more since I am part of, see, the governor of Delaware has a interfaith council, and I'm the Hindu representative on that council. So I rub shoulders with representatives from all religion on that council. And I hear them talk about their religion. We have a Jewish representative, we have a Catholic, we have a Protestant, we have an Islam, we have a Sikh, we have a Mormon, you name it. We have all, we even have an American Indian, right? So we have all of these people that talk about, and I see what the commonalities are. And so I've tried to write this book in a way that maybe is not alienating anybody. Of course, the background is in India. Krishna was in India, and in this war, he was participating, which was in India, of course. Not totally divorced from all of that, but hopefully it can make it more universal in terms of who it appeals to.
That's wonderful. And that's really encapsulates the spirit behind our podcast as well. So that's really what we're all about. And that's what the founder of Temple of Cosmic Religion, our Guruji, Sadhguru Sant Keshav Das Ji, his outlook was exactly that. How can I bring the common links between all these diverse cultures, traditions, and everything? And, largely we see in the world that we're living in, the differences are highlighted and magnified. And that's the reason why so much, if you will, destruction has really happened, in terms of human civilization and, not being able to see in spirit. Majority of these have the common goal. And unfortunately, that's not seen by the vast majority. So as a follow-up to how you came around to actually writing this book, I believe this is the second edition of this book. So I'd like to know if you can mention what are the notable changes that you've made to re-release this book as a second edition.
Okay, yeah. So the original book came out in 2020. And it's the first time I ever wrote a book. I mean, it was a learning experience as to what are the steps that you got to go through for this and so on and so forth. After the book came out, and this has happened throughout my life, right? So I write something, it's been written, it's been proofread, the whole 9 yards. And now I'm using this book, to continue the teaching, right? So I'm going through this. And then as I'm doing it, I'm thinking, oh, well, yeah, I should mention one other thing. And that's it. I can't believe I didn't put that in the book. Or I'm going over a verse, somebody asks a question. Oh, yeah, very good question pertaining to this. And here's the answer to this. Doggone it, I should have put it in the book. So I'm going over the years, I'm saying, oh, I missed that, I missed this, I missed this. And then, even though that first edition was proofread by at least 8 different people, which means 16 eyes.
Wow.
There's still some typos in there. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, I had a bunch of figures in that book, and they were all in black and white, and I know nothing about presentations in books and the videography that goes in behind how you lay it out, in a book and all that. So the figures are quite honestly poor quality. So the second edition is aimed to address all 3 of those issues. So I've enhanced the material in a number of places. The figures as you will, if you can compare edition one, I should significantly upgraded. They're all in color. They now fit the page completely. There's no half the page that's empty, all that kind of jazz.
Got it.
And number three, the internals are all in color, not just the figures, but all the verses also are in color so that they're easier to read. And so it's been a combination of all those things. And then another minor thing, which is not that minor for my family, is that between the first and second edition, I had 2 more grandchildren. So I was able to acknowledge the 2 new grandchildren in my second edition as well.
That's sweet.
But yeah, the driving force was upgrading the content and making it in color.
Got it. Thank you. Now I'd like to actually get into a few specific Gita wisdom-related questions. So the famous lines from the early part of chapter 4, verses 7 and 8, yada yada hi dharmasya, and how Krishna says that when righteousness declines and evil rises, and when my votaries or my devotees are, challenged in life with a lot of miserable conditions and all that due to oppression and all that. And, this is really a question that a lot of people, tend to ask about the existence of God and whether they should have faith in this. And here Krishna is saying flat out that, I incarnate every yuga after yuga and restore the dharma and all that, restore righteousness, and to instill faith back in all those who believe in God, to basically assure them that I'm there. We're actually going through pretty dark times right now in many different ways, not just us as a country, but really globally. So the effect of the Kali Yuga is actually showing already quite a bit. And based on the episode we had done on cosmic creation and time, we're just a little over 5,000 years into it. But people have this question about, we're all in distress, and every day it seems like it's getting worse. So where's this incarnation of God? How come we're not being relieved from our miseries or relieved from our painful situations? Or, how come we're having to go through this? And I know there's a karma aspect to it, but I'd like to get your perspective on how you would answer this kind of a question, because you may have been asked this question with relation to these verses.
Not that particular question, but it's a great question. So yeah, the way the world works, is that we go through these pairs of opposites all the time. There's periods of happiness, prosperity, goodness. There's periods of distress and violence and evil and so on and so forth. And the scriptures say that people have this impression that time is linear and moves forward. Well, yeah, linear is move forward, but time is cyclical. We go through these cycles. So yes, we are in the Kali Yuga, like you said. We're 5,000 years into it out of 432,000 years. But we got to remember that, so at the end of Kali Yuga, then Satya Yuga comes, and then Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, so on and so forth. But there are many cycles within each cycle as well. So Kali Yuga, 432,000 years, doesn't mean that from day one of Kali Yuga to the end of Kali Yuga, it's going to be a straight line going down in goodness and virtues. There's going to be many cycles along the way. Now, where are we in one of these mini cycles? I don't know, right? You may say that, this is going on long enough. It's bad enough. Now it's time for, well, we don't know that, right? So if you think of this from a story's point of view, where we have these evil kings like Ravan or Kans, right? Ravan was killed by Ram. I don't know how much of the audience knows about Ravan or Kans, but just using that as an example. So when is it time to kill Ravan? When he's 10 years old, 20 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, 100 years old, This is all part of the laws of nature coming into play where events and circumstances unfold. You may say by the time Ravan was 60 years old, that's enough. Where is the guy? Where is Ram to kill him? Well, Maybe he's not supposed to die at age 60. Maybe it's supposed to be 70 or 80 or 90, right? So yeah, it's pretty bad. I agree with you. A lot of stress in the world. Mental health is the number one issue globally. I mean, humanitarians are saying that, religious people are saying that, so on and so forth. Well, at what point is it saturated enough that a dramatic correction is needed? Well, you might say it was 5 years ago. I might say it's today. Others may say, well, yeah, we're going to have to get to it. Well, I just don't know how God runs his system. Okay. Right. So it could be very near, or it could be 10, 20, 30 years from now, or it could be the next presidential cycle. I mean, whatever your perspective is. But yes, the assurance, yada yada hi dharmasya glanirabhavati bharata abhyutthana madharmasya tadatmanam srajaniham paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha dushkratam dharma sansthapanarthaya sambhavami yuge yuge. So the assurance is there. When I come, I will protect the pious, and I will destroy the wicked and evil people, and reestablish the principles of religion. And I do that millennium after millennium. So is it the end of the millennium when he or she, or whatever the form of God you like, should be coming now, or is the end of millennium about to come? It's a matter of perspective. Now, if we look at our microcosm, and then I'll stop. My microcosm could be my family. And my family had a lot of trials and tribulations until a year ago. Then I got married. I had these beautiful children. I got 3 promotions on the job. For me, Satyuga is here. Right? Right? But for the other person, oh my God, I married the love of my life. She has terminal cancer. We have a child who's disabled. I lost my job. I couldn't finish my degree. For me, where is my God? Right? So we have microcosms, we have macrocosms, right? We have some countries that are doing very well, some countries that are in deep doo-doo, right? Depending on your perspective. You could be in South Sudan, or you could be in a process, right? Again, so these are microcosms in the macrocosm, and then there's the big picture, and then there's the medium, small, and minuscule picture. It's all a matter of perspective.
Very true. But I also feel like, do you give credibility to the fact that, you know, God doesn't always appear in the same forms that we have heard him appearing in? It could be in the form of a very peaceful saint who is uplifting humanity through his sermons or pravachans or whatever, and he is giving people that inner strength or that encouragement to go within, because they say God is within everything also. So it's not just something that externally has to come to save us. We can, if we realize the God within, then we'll have a different way of looking at what's happening to us.
Sure. And as you do that, you will automatically attract the good things towards you. As you become more refined, as your heart and mind gets more and more pure, going down whatever spiritual path you're taking,
right,
you will automatically attract piousness towards you. And so your world will become more sublime, even though your surroundings may not be that sublime. And the opposite is also true. You fall into, just make up an example, you fall into evil company, people who are always angry, wicked, selfish, destructive. Well, that's what your world becomes. You become like that, and you are surrounded by stress over a period of time, right? So, yeah, I agree with what you said.
Thank you. And the last question I had was, among the 3 paths, since you just mentioned that, there's Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Karma Yoga. Those are the 3 chief pathways that are prescribed by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. So I wanted to know, many a time it seems like one who chooses whichever path they choose, they're ultimately getting to the same destination. But in my life, I feel like the more and more I've kind of contemplated on it, that whichever one of these two paths that you choose to start with, or whichever one resonates with you, I feel like somewhere along the way, you end up sort of mixing in the other two as well. I feel there's some combination that might lead to the best results, but I'm not quite sure about that. Like, do you think that exclusivity of one path really is practical in today's times, or do you feel like some sort of a combination of these three is a simpler way of getting to the ultimate destination?
Great question. Can we take a couple of minutes on this?
Absolutely. Take your time,
Okay.
please.
So the beauty of having these three paths is that you can pick the one that appeals to you the most based on your personality, based on your inclinations, and based on your interest. Okay? So just to be very specific, so Bhakti Yoga is the path of devotion, Karma Yoga is the path of action, and Jnana Yoga is the path of knowledge. And there are a lot of subsets under Jnana Yoga. People put Raj Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, under that as well. So actually, in my book, I have one of the appendices where if you answer 20 questions, you get a reflection of yourself as to which path may be most appealing to you. And then based on that, you can focus on that as you read the Gita. And there's specific verses for karma, specific verses for bhakti, specific verses for jnana, and so on and so forth. Okay. The idea is to get started. Let's start. Okay.
Absolutely.
Starting is the toughest thing. Once you start, and once you get on a train, staying on the train is easier to get on a train, right? Because you got to pick your train, you got to go to the train station, you got to wait for the train to arrive, you got to buy a ticket to the train, and you get on the train. There's a lot of steps involved. Once you're on the train, just stay on the train. It's a lot easier, right? Pick your train, get on the train, and it's going to take you to a destination. Now, between the three, is one preferred over the other? No. But let me just say this. In the present day and age, the scriptures have said that Bhakti Yoga is the easiest to follow because it doesn't require a lot of intellectual tenacity. It's the path of devotion. It's where you take the all-pervasive spirit and you have a form and you have a name, which makes it easier for the mind and the senses to settle down on, right? Because the mind has trouble connecting to abstract stuff. If I tell you God is all pervasive, okay, well, how do I worship that which is all pervasive? And he's here, there. I mean, how do I settle my mind down? I need to focus on something, right? So Bhakti Yoga makes it easier. You have a form and you have a name. And through the agency of that form and name, you are worshiping the all-pervasive Supreme Spirit. Okay, so Bhakti Yoga makes that easy. So instead of negating the senses or suppressing the senses, you engage the senses in the service of God, right? So my nose will smell the fragrance offered to the Lord. My tongue will taste food that's offered to the Lord. My ears will hear holy music and holy bhajans, or whatever you want to call it. My sense of touch will touch those things that I do arti with or I make offerings with, right? And my eyes will behold the form of them. So all my senses are engaged in devotion to the Lord. So that makes it easier. Okay, but you don't have to do Bhakti Yoga. You can, if you're a very active kind of a guy and all that, you can take Karma Yoga. If you're very intellectual, you can do Jnana Yoga. Now, there's a figure in my book. You're on audio, so you can't see it, but it's figure number 6 on page 14. And the analogy is that of a mountain. Okay, now, figuratively, let's call it the bliss of being connected to God is represented by the summit of this mountain. And now, if you want to go up a mountain, how many paths are there? Well, they're infinite. Okay? But let's simplify. You can take the Karma Yoga path to get to the summit, or the Bhakti Yoga path, or the Jnana Yoga path. And by the way, that path may not be straight. You may go up there, slip a little bit. That's okay. Well, you get back on the path and go up. But what happens as you get towards the summit? The three paths all come together. Eventually, it doesn't make a difference what path you started on. You want to get to the summit, you pick the easiest path to get to the summit. You may want to go around 15 times, or you want to go straight up, which is harder, but take whatever path you want to take. The idea is to get to the summit. And as you get closer to the summit, it doesn't matter what path you started on. They do start to come together, because when you follow Karma Yoga and your mind and heart get purified, you get the knowledge that you may get when you started on Jnana Yoga. And you develop devotion to the Lord, which you get if you started on Bhakti. So they all start to come together, and at some point, it doesn't make any difference.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a great answer.
All right. I think I'm up, Uncle. And before I get into questions, I want to give you a little bit of feedback here on your incredible book, Mission Accomplished. Okay. So I know you call it Mission Possible, but from my perspective, Mission Accomplished. What do I mean by that? You know, you described one of your goals of the book being to combine this Hindu scripture foundational text, Eastern, with the Western sensibilities from kind of a Western experience that you bring to it, living in the United States for such a long period of time. And I just want to say that I absolutely think your book does that. I first read the Gita in college as an undergrad. And while, you know, I probably wasn't as wise back then as I am now, I found it very esoteric and very foreign. After reading your version, I find it so relatable. And almost in every chapter, I'm thinking, yes, we have that exact same concept in Judaism, or maybe it's a little different and some of the language is different, but I get it. I see it. So thank you. Definitely, I recommend it to a non-Eastern audience, as well as an Eastern audience, of course. But even the visuals, how you talked about the font and the coloring, it's so helpful. And the quotes, I love that you throw in like Einstein and Lao Tzu. And, you know, I really, really appreciated it. So thank you. Okay. With all your experience reading, learning, teaching, and now writing about the wisdom of the Gita, do you feel your understanding has evolved over time? Do you sometimes discover a new gem of wisdom, or you see a new perspective that you previously did not see? And now earlier, you referenced that the Gita had transformed your life. So maybe this is a good time to get into some of that if you're so willing.
Yeah. So like I said before, the Gita has transformed my life. And the thing about scriptures is that when you read it the second time, the first time you read it, you know, maybe you don't understand it at all. You said, well, I don't get it. Okay. And a lot of people just give up. Okay. They say, well, no, I don't understand this. I don't have the time either, by the way. So, okay. But you read it the second time, third time, fourth, you always keep peeling the onion, and you have more and more revelations every time you read it. These books, to me, scriptural books are not ordinary books. They're pretty mystical in that sense. I've known people who, and I specifically I can say about this Gita, that, because you shared this with me, this was just like a year or two ago. He said he got the book. He was very stressed out. He got the book and he just randomly opened a page. And the page that he opened was pertinent to the issue that he was going through at that time. And he read those 2-3 pages and he was just amazed. And he called me and he said that. I said, well, okay, that's why we don't keep this book anywhere in the house. We keep this book in a designated location. Okay, maybe you have an altar at home, or maybe you have a place of study at home, whatever. You put this book in a designated place because it is not an ordinary book. And so, yes, it has transformed my life. I'll share one personal example, which I've shared with others. When my mother died, and also when my father died, okay, I did an eulogy, you know, at the funeral, and I never cried. And so some people say, well, you know what? Maybe he didn't love his mother at all. Or maybe he didn't love his father at all. I mean, he's just like going through it. One person actually said, does he know that his mother died? I was able to, it's a traumatic event. Trust me. I love my mother. I love my father just like anybody else would. Traumatic event. But you develop an understanding and you're evolved enough that you can deal with whatever life dishes to you. Equanimity is a virtue that develops in you over a period of time via study and spiritual progress. And equanimity means being balanced, not just in times of distress, but also in times of happiness, knowing that these two things are part of the world and they come and go with different timelines that we can't predict. Staying balanced through this is what spiritual evolution is all about. So yes, it has transformed my life, and a number of people who've been reading the Gita for a long time have said that as well. And it's an ongoing process. It's a journey that we're all in. So have I fully imbibed it? No. Have I imbibed it more than 5 years ago? Absolutely. More than 20 years? Absolutely, yes. But I'm still learning. And as they say, the best way to learn is to teach. Well, I've been teaching it for 25 years. So I have been learning and I'm still learning.
Yes, thank you for sharing these personal stories. So, as a teacher and a learner, what are some myths or misconceptions that you'd like to clear up about the Gita? Are there any common ones, any common misunderstandings or mistranslations of verses, etc., that you think should be clarified?
Well, okay, let me mention one. Actually, maybe I can mention two things if we have the time. Some people have come to me and said, the setting of the Gita is, there's a good side and then there's a bad side, and they're getting ready to fight a war. And Arjuna was a warrior on the Pandav side. The good side is confused whether he should fight this war because the people on the other side are all his cousins and relatives. He says, should I really fight this war and kill my cousins, whatever? So he's confused. And so before the war starts, Krishna speaks the Bhagavad Gita, okay? So some people have said to me, wait a minute, I don't get it. Is that the right place to transmit knowledge in the middle of a battlefield just before the war is about? What kind of, I mean, if you want to give knowledge, you go to an ashram, you go to a hermitage, or you sit underneath a tree, or you go to a church or synagogue or monastery or temple, and you impart knowledge during the middle of a battlefield when the war is about to start. The conch shells have been blown. They're ready to, fire their arrows, and someone... Okay, so here's the thing. People need to understand the symbolism behind this. There's a big misunderstanding. Here's the symbolism. The human mind is a battlefield. And here's why it's a battlefield. Is because of the choices in life that we have to make. Okay. When we go through life, we are making decisions all the time. Do I marry this person? Do I join this company or that company? Do I make friends with this guy or that girl? Okay. Do I go to this restaurant or that restaurant, right? And I have two job offers. Okay, well, this one is in Timbuktu, this one's in Alaska. Which one? We're making decisions all the time. Now, 99% of the time, we can make that decision. We can distinguish between right and wrong. But there's that 1% of the time when we're not sure, because it's 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, right? If I take this job, these are the pluses and minuses. If I take this job, these are the pluses and minuses. And it's like 49-51 or 49.5 and 50.5. Well, what's the right decision here? Okay. It's about 1% of the time in our life, or maybe even 0.5% of the time. But you know what? sometimes that 0.5% can have a significant impact on the rest of our life. Choice between 2 jobs, choice between 2 girlfriends to marry, choice between 2 boyfriends to marry, whatever, you take your pick. Okay, at those times we are confused. When we are confused, we don't know what to do. Okay, and so at that time, number one, we have to admit, first of all, we're confused. Some people don't even admit they're confused. Their ego takes over. Let's just pick one and go with it. Yeah, heck with it. Okay. And then if it doesn't work out, it wasn't because of me, it was because of that yo-yo. Okay. We don't admit. So number one, admit you're confused. Number two, go to a trusted resource for advice. Number three, have humility and listen to the guidance that you're being given. That's the symbolism behind the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so I'm fighting a righteous war. I have not been given my share of the kingdom that I'm entitled to. I'm Arjun. So I should fight. But to fight, I'm going to be killing my cousins, my grandfather, and my guru who's on the other side. How can I pick up my sword or my bow and arrow to kill them who I revere and respect and admire? That's against my culture. How can I? So should I fight or should I not fight? I'm confused. The 0.5% of the decisions in your life that you have to make. So number one, Arjun admits he's confused. Number two, he surrenders to Krishna, a trusted resource. He says, you're no longer my charioteer. No longer my charioteer. I'm making you my guru now. Please guide me and instruct me. Okay? And the interesting thing in the Gita, again, part of the symbolism, Krishna doesn't say anything in chapter 1. Until Arjun gets to the point of humility and addresses him as a guru in the 7th verse of chapter 2, doesn't say a thing. But after that, Krishna then starts his instruction. I think it's verse number 11 in chapter. And then the rest of the Gita is that instruction. And then in the end, the guru says, and this is part of the tradition, I have told you everything I wanted to tell you. Now it's up to you. You decide what you want to do. And Arjuna says, my Lord, thank you very much for the instruction. I know what my duty is right now. I'm going to surrender my results to you, but I will do my duty to the best of my ability. Okay, so it's not a religion that promotes violence. As people say, oh, well. Number two, they're giving spiritual instruction in weird places. Number two, they're promoting violence. So it's not about violence. It's a lot deeper than that. You got to read the Gita and understand the symbolism to understand that. Okay, so that's one key, misconception. And then I guess the other people that ask, and I'll just make this short, is that, come on, this thing was spoken 5,000 years ago. I mean, our world is different, man. I mean, we have artificial intelligence now. We have internet. We have atomic bombs. We have, social media. That time there were chariots and horses and bow and arrow. I mean, come on. Why is that pertinent today? Well, you know what? What Krishna said 5,000 years ago is as pertinent today as it was back then. You know why? Because human nature is still the same. The problems that humans have today are the same, maybe even worse. Okay, yeah. We're not on chariots and horses, we're driving around in self-driving Teslas, right? I mean, the world has changed, the environment, our clothing is different, our weapons are different, our technology is different, and so on and so forth. But the basic human nature is what? The basic human nature is we have desires, we have wants. We always seek happiness, but we encounter a lot of distress. We have love, we have hate. We don't really know who we are. We don't know where we came from. We don't know where we go after death. Other than that, we think we're great. Okay? So human nature is still the same. Okay, today also we have desires, we have wants, we seek happiness, but we go through periods of distress. We have love, we have hate, we have so many decisions to make. We get stressed out over making those decisions, and we make the wrong. Actually, nowadays we have more choices, which is a great thing. But more choices creates more stress because we got to sort through those. My father told me, son, become a doctor or an engineer. And I said, well, I really don't like biology that much. Okay, then you become an engineer. Hey, I didn't have 50,000 career choices to pick from that would have created stress. My dad says, based on my wisdom, you become an engineer. End of story, no stress. Arranged marriages in India. I'm not dating 50,000 girls before I find the right one. And by the way, I lived with her for 2 years and she's changed. I don't want to marry her. Choices, which is great. I'm not saying choices are bad, but also create stress. Arranged marriages. My mom and dad had me meet this girl. I met her. Great. Loved her. We've been married for 49 years now. Right? I'm not saying today is bad. Don't misunderstand. I'm not saying today is bad and the past was good. I'm just saying human nature is still the same. So the issues 5,000 years ago are as pertinent today as they ever were. So the teachings and the learning still apply to us. So again, some misconceptions. Those are the two things that people bring up with me. This is at the high level. Okay, I didn't get into specific verses, but that's at the high level.
Well, that brings me to my next question. Do you have a specific verse that's sort of like your go-to verse, or do you have a specific chapter that you connect with the most in the Gita?
I have many favorite verses.
Mm-hmm.
I can answer this question in 30 seconds, or I can answer it in 30 hours. You take your pick.
We'll go with the seconds, Uncle.
Okay, how about this? I'll give you my favorite verse on Bhakti Yoga. I'll give you my favorite verse on Karma Yoga, and I'll give you my favorite verse on Jnana Yoga.
Perfect.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So in Bhakti Yoga, and by the way, I should say one other thing. What I have found is that in explaining verses and talking about verses, it really helps to listen to stories connected to some of those verses. People may forget the verse, but they remember the story. And if that story is a practical implementation of that verse, then the story sticks. And so the message of the verse sticks. And I found that to be very powerful. So whenever I talk about verses, I'll bring in a story. I'm talking about stories from the scriptures, not stories that I made up myself. I'm talking about stories from the scriptures. And so, I found that to be very useful. So I'll mention very briefly 2 verses on Bhakti Yoga. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktaya prayachati tadaham bhaktayo upratam ashnami priyatatmana. That's chapter 9, verse 26. And then 18.66, Sarva dharman parityajya mamekam sharanam raja aham tvam sarva pape bhayo mokshakshami ma shucha. Translation: if anyone offers me with devotion a leaf, a flower, or even water, I gladly accept it from my sincere devotee. And then the second one, abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. I will deliver you from all sins, fear not. Those are my 2 favorite verses on Bhakti Yoga. Okay. On Karma Yoga, it has to be Karmanyavadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phal hetur bhurma te sangostva karmani. You have the right and the privilege to perform action, but you don't have a right to the results. Don't let the fruit of your actions be the prime motivator for you to act the way you're supposed to act. And you should not resort to inaction. That's a fundamental Karma Yoga verse. And on Gyan Yoga, and this one I think is 2.47, the one I just mentioned. On Gyan Yoga, I would say 2.16. Nasate vidyate bhavo, na bhavo vidyate sata. Which is pretty profound. It says, that which changes all the time is not real, and that which is real always exists. So when you first read it, you say, I don't know what he's talking about. Well, this is what he's talking about. You look around you and you see, what is it around you that never changes? Is it the plant? Well, no, the plant changes. Is it the tree? Well, the tree always changes, eventually dies. Okay, is it the mosquito? Well, no, the mosquito dies. No, is it the fish? No. No. Is it the rabbit? No. No. Is it the cow? No, no. Is it the human body? No, the human body is changing all the time too. None of those are the truth because they're changing with time. What's not changing with time is the soul. And that is the reality of everything that exists. And then connected to that is the thought that we are not a physical body that has a soul. We are not a physical body that has a soul. We are a soul that happens to have a physical body. And there's a big difference between those two statements. So that's my favorite one for Gyan. Those are my favorite verses.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think, one of the most interesting points you alluded to was the world has changed a lot since when the Gita was shared with Arjun, right? And people admire the Gita, but sometimes it is still a challenge to take its tenets and live by it. So how does one truly implement the Gita in their life while navigating today's hustle bustle life, societal obligations, familial obligations, professional obligations? What's the best way to try and take the wisdom of the Gita and put it into your life to make it better and lead you to that path of salvation?
Okay, great question. You got to get on the train. Okay, now how do you get on the train? You don't have to follow a spiritual practice for 8 hours a day. How about 3 minutes a day? But every day. Consistency. Now, okay, so what do I do for 3 minutes a day? Well, bow your head in front of God, even a picture of God, every day. Well, but today's Sunday. No. You do it on a Sunday. Oh, wait a minute. Today's my anniversary. No. Oh, but today's my birthday. No. Today I'm on vacation in the Bahamas. No. You can't take out. How long did it take for you to get your college degree? Did it take 1 second or 1 year or 2 years or 4 years or what? Okay. What do you accomplish significant in life that doesn't require consistency and patience? Everything. Anything you do in life requires consistency and patience. So you got to follow that. What you are doing is you're purifying your heart and mind over a period of time by doing this. When you do that, that verse, which was totally alien to you when you first read it, will start to make sense. That instruction that saint, that talk that he gave, which you understood maybe 1% of it, all of a sudden now you understand 5%. Get on the train. is the message. Once you get on the train, like I said, it's easier to stay on the train. And stay on the train. Don't get off the train. Okay, keep going on that train. And over a period of time, the results are guaranteed to come, guaranteed with a capital G. So get on the train, stay with it. That's all Krishna wants. Ananyaschintayanto man ye jana paryupasate tesham nityabhiyuktanam yogakshemam vahamyaham. If you are genuine in this, the Lord gives us the assurance that He from within will give you what you need and preserve what you need to keep. It's not a displacement process. It's an enhancement process. You have good things in you, you have bad things in you. You have negative emotions, you have positive emotions. Over a period of time, the Lord facilitates you removing the negativity, enhancing the positivity that cleans your heart and mind and connects you to divinity. And once that starts to happen, you will know it. And once you get a taste of it, you will say, so this is what I was looking for all this time. It surpasses the happiness that you get from material objects that are temporary. And you yourself, don't take anybody's word for you. Yourself will experience it. What could be better evidence than that? You yourself experience. You don't have to take anybody's word. See, that's the thing about the scriptures. You read something, I don't believe it. Okay, it's okay if you don't believe it. Are you willing to give it a try? If you start giving a try and you personally experience it, you become a believer. But you've got to get on the train. You got to stay on the train for at least a finite length of time to see the results.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think I would just probably reiterate what Pratt and Christine feel about the book is that, it really puts everything in such an easy to follow format. And I think that, anyone who reads it will much better understand the complexities of the Gita. And that will definitely be helpful in leading them on the path to implement those things. So
let me just add one quick thing. It pays to be able to discuss and talk over some of these things as you're reading it. And there's a simple reason for that. The same word in different places has slightly different meaning. Okay, like yoga in one verse, in one chapter, is a slightly different meaning than yoga in another verse. Okay, and so having the opportunity to discuss it with peers or a guru or whoever, from that standpoint, is very useful. So it has to start with you. I don't mean you personally, but generically you. It has to start with you, and then you connect with other people that are on the same path, and it multiplies. So there's a lot of benefit in being able to do that. And I myself, I've attended so many talks by so many swamis. I've read so many interpretations of the Gita. They all help me, understand. So that part is that's what satsang is all about. So satsang is very important along the path.
Thank you so much, Pramod Uncle, for joining us. It's really been a blessing to speak with you. Thank you so much for taking our questions and patiently answering them. And we really enjoyed this discussion with you. And all the best to your book. It really was very effective in understanding these verses. And I have begun to recommend this book to others. And it is available on Amazon to those of you who are interested. And I will be including the Amazon link to this book in the description of this episode. As Christiane said, if on your path to hopefully mission accomplished, I think Mission Possible will be a great read to help you along that way. And, we wish you the very best with the success of this book and, of course, on your spiritual journey.
Well, thank you. I thank you for inviting me. This has been a great discussion. I enjoyed it. Good questions, too.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, and for me, it's been a privilege to have you on our podcast. I know we've had different discussions over the years on spirituality, and it's great to introduce you to my friends and colleagues here and
Yeah.
continue those discussions on this platform. So thank you so much for taking the time to join us this evening.
Great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And
Thank
good
you.
luck on your spiritual journeys.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And I look forward to meeting you in person, sir.
Sure. Anytime. We'll have Vikram facilitate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Wow, that was wonderful. Really
Yeah.
insightful. And, really, I mean, thank you, Vikram, for letting me know about this. I think it was a great tie-in to what we do. And I love Pramod Uncle's perspective of universality. Like I said, that's really what we represent here. And it was great to have him as a guest to start our second season.
Absolutely. I mean, I just thought it would be great to share with everyone what I have known my whole life.
Right.
So yes, this is very special, and I'm excited that all our listeners will have the chance to hear his insights as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving along, maybe we're going to start this as a series of segments that we do in every episode. A segment called Spotlight Personality, perhaps. And that spotlight personality in this episode, starting the new year, is Swami Vivekananda, who many know was this pioneer saint who brought Eastern philosophy and Eastern wisdom in the different philosophical schools of Vedanta and that great wisdom to the West. And, actually spoke on such a big platform as the Parliament of World Religions in Chicago in the 19th century. So I wanted to play Guruji's video, which is just a few minutes, sort of like an intro to this topic.
Paramahamsa Ramakrishna giving a wonderful experience to Swami Vivekananda, the first Guru of India to bless America in 1893, September the 11th, in Chicago Parliament of Religions. He was a bold student, well versed in the Eastern and Western philosophies, studying in the university, and wanted to see a man of God. He came to Sri Ramakrishna. And he asked him, "Have you seen God?" For the first time, a very simple and sincere answer from Ramakrishna convinced him. Sri Ramakrishna smiled and said, "Yes, I have seen God. I see him even now, just like you see the walls of this Dakshineshwar temple." Naren, who later became Swami Vivekananda by the blessings of Ramakrishna, asked him, "If you have seen God, can you please show him to me?" Ramakrishna smiled and with a very piercing look, looked into the eyes of Naren and asked him, "Are you ready?" "Yes, I am." And Ramakrishna came nearer, drew nearer and nearer to him, until finally he lifted his leg and kept the foot of his leg on the thigh of Narendra. Later, Swami Vivekananda explained his experience. Like a tornado, he came over me. The contact was terrible. In the beginning stages of such an initiation, where the energy is transmitted into me, I saw the walls of the Dakshineshwar temple revolving with greater and greater velocity until I was tossed into the ocean of light and bliss. All that I remember is, I have my parents at home. I have my brothers and sisters at home. What are you doing? What are you doing? And then there was complete silence. The knowledge knower and the known became one. I felt drowning into the ocean of immortality. When I came out, all that I saw was this half-closed eye, half-open mouth, Paramahamsa Ramakrishna patting on my bosom and telling, for the time being, this is enough. When the right time comes, everything will be revealed. And that was the bliss of discrimination. Bliss in Sanskrit is Ananda. Discrimination is Viveka. Therefore, as per his experience of the bliss of discrimination, he was given the name Vivekananda. To bless America for the first time, this great Hindu monk, the hero monk of India, came through the 7 oceans and blessed this land. Since that time, so many gurus are visiting and blessing all.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, so Vikram, I know you have researched, a good amount about Swami Vivekananda. And as we heard the intro about how he received spiritual illumination, if you will, and that amazing experience that he had thanks to his guru, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, and what he later on went on to do, great things. So I'd like you to expand on that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. I mean, it's really interesting about Swami Vivekananda because only recently did I learn about him. For years, I had seen that iconic painting of him standing in a saffron color outfit and saffron color turban, and he's staring out in the oceans around him. And then there's the other picture where he has his arms crossed and he looks very aristocratic. And so I had only known him initially through those 2 famous artistic renderings. But, I eventually, even prior to this podcast, I was very fascinated by him and to learn about him. And I, before I go into information about him, I'll tell our listeners that, there's a film about him called Swami Vivekananda, a Hindi film made by a filmmaker named G.V. Iyer, who was known for making spiritual movies. And his most famous spiritual movie is a film on Adi Shankaracharya, which was a movie made entirely in Sanskrit. So he made a film in Hindi on Swami Vivekananda. And I saw this movie, and it kind of furthered my appetite to learn even more about him, because the movie showed all the key aspects of his life up until the World Parliament of Religions. That's where the film ends. But it made certain assumptions about facts we, maybe knew or didn't know about him. So I didn't fully understand all the concepts. So, I read up on him, and so I'll share with our listeners a little bit about his life and then a little bit about his key teachings. So he was born in 1863 in Kolkata to a aristocratic Bengali family. He was an excellent student. He was, very into his studies. He was very into music. He knew how to sing. And then he also was inclined towards the spiritual as well, into meditation. And one of his professors brought up the concept of trance, or samadhi in this case. And he recommended to him to go to a place called Dakshineshwar, where he would meet Sri Ramakrishna Paramhans, who Guruji mentioned in his video. And actually, their first encounter was very interesting because there was a gathering happening, and Swami Vivekananda, who at that time was known as Naren, he sang, and Ramakrishna Paramhans was fixated just on him. There was no particular reason or obvious reason why that was the case, but he was just fixated on him. And it was because Ramakrishna Paramhans realized that this person has a spiritual light, within him. Now, at that time, Swami Vivekananda didn't really think much of it, but he was immensely drawn to Ramakrishna Paramhans. Then, there was that incident that Guruji talked about Ramakrishna Paramhans placing his foot on Naren going into this kind of spiritual realm. And that really was kind of a turning point for that. And, when Ramakrishna died, Swami Vivekananda, despite, whatever familial obligations he had, initially he was worried about that, as when he had his first spiritual awakening with Ramakrishna. But what happened is that the Swami was very good friends with a particular king. And that king offered to help take care of his family. And in the meanwhile, Swami Vivekananda became a monk, and he traveled all over India, understanding the spiritual philosophies of everyone, understanding, the condition of India, what is India like. And, eventually this led him to hearing about the World Parliament of Religions event that was going to happen in Chicago in 1893. And, through various factors, he wasn't initially invited, and he wasn't, able to just be a part of it. But through some friends and through some assistance, he was able to get registered to be the person who would represent Hinduism there. Now, this was a time when Chicago had gone through, a fire and some economic downturn. And so over a year or two, if I'm not mistaken, they rebuilt the city, and the World Parliament of Religions was part of a bigger festival which would celebrate the revival of Chicago. Swami Vivekananda, it was his turn to speak at this event, and there had been many speakers before him, but it had gotten to a point where the listeners were starting to get a little bored. Every speech sounded similar, sounded a little monotone, and the audience was getting restless. So the Swami went up. He was incredibly nervous. He remembered his guru, Ramakrishna Paramhans, and he started with the line, "Sisters and brothers of America." And the way in which he said it, it got everyone's attention. Not to mention that he was, uniquely dressed as well. And then he went on this amazing speech, which I'll get into, which is an iconic thing. And, his reputation in the US grew. He had all this adulation, but he was not enjoying it because he knew about the conditions that were in India at the time, and how, there was still colonialism, there was still a lot of poverty, and, he felt that he had to come back after a couple of years. So he was in the US, he traveled in Europe, he spoke about Vedanta, he spoke about yoga. Again, as Guruji mentioned, that he was, the first to expose the West really to what Hinduism is. So in 1897, he comes back to India, and he establishes something called the Ramakrishna Math, which is a monastic order with the ideologies of Ramakrishna Paramhans, and the Ramakrishna Mission, whose goal is to provide humanitarian service. So the core of what he believed was, if you serve humanity, then you are serving God. That was the core of what he said. He believed in universal brotherhood. He believed in self-discipline. And, he was a strong advocate of religious tolerance and universal acceptance. Of particular note, he believed in oneness and unity. So what does that mean? That means that he felt that all religions and people are ultimately going towards the same reality, which is God. It's kind of like everyone has the same goal, and there's just different paths to get there. And he believed strongly in that. He believed strongly in the divinity of the soul and being able to bring that divinity out, right? He believed in spirituality in a very practical manner. So not just something that you think about and, it has to be applied in your life. It has to be lived. You have to be a karma yogi. You have to serve society. And, he was a big advocate for, the uplifting of women, of empowering the masses. He was not in support of casteism, and he was not in support of any sort of superstition or blind belief in any sort of ideologies. And, he was a young person, so he was also a very big inspiration to the youth in India. He pushed them to embrace their Indian heritage and really to serve the society around him. I will note that he passed away in 1902, where he was only 39 years old. So very, very, very young. His birthday is on January 12th, and he's considered one of the most prominent saints in India. And another interesting fact about his birthday is it's celebrated as National Youth Day. So what I'm sharing here is just the tip of the iceberg about him. But I would recommend people to, it's on YouTube, I'd recommend people to watch the film Swami Vivekananda. But there's a documentary that came on PBS called America's First Guru. I would recommend people to watch that as an introduction. It really lays out his story and the contributions that he's made in a great way. So these are two ways that I've learned about him, but there's also many, many books and other avenues. So that's a little bit about Swami Vivekananda.
Thanks so much for that wonderful, brief biographical view of Swami Vivekananda's life. I just read this book called A Short Life of Swami Vivekananda. It's a nice pocket-sized book, very small. It's just a little over 100 pages. It was published by Advaita Ashrama, which I believe was his publishing house. Basically, his followers created this, published it under that name. And Swami Tejasananda was the one who put this book together or authored the book. So there are some things from this book that I'd like to read, sort of expand on some of the things that Vikram said, which was great information to start off with. So it's interesting that Swami Vivekananda, before he actually went to Chicago or to the West, he had toured basically end to end the entire subcontinent of India. And during that time, he went through a lot of different regions, and when he was in Rajasthan, he met a lot of people of royalty, right? So it says, while at Alwar, the Swami had a very interesting discussion with Prince Mangal Singh. The Maharaja asked the Swami, "Well, I have no faith in idol worship. I cannot worship wood, earth, stone, or metal like other people. Does this mean that I shall fare worse in the life hereafter?" So he's asking, is it sinful for me to not believe in worshiping idols? The eyes of the Swami alighted on a picture of the Maharaja, which was hanging on the wall. At his express desire, it was passed to him. Holding it in his hand, the Swami asked, "Whose picture is this?" The Divan answered, "It is the likeness of our Maharaja." So it's a picture or portrait of the Maharaja himself. A moment later, those present trembled with fear when they heard the Swami commanding the Divan to spit on it. The Divan is like the minister of that palace, and he was asked to spit on that portrait of the king by Swami Vivekananda himself, right? The Divan was thunderstruck, and the eyes of all glanced in terror and awe from the prince to the monk, from the monk to the prince. But all the while, the Swami insisted, "Spit on it. I say spit on it." And the Divan, or the minister, in fear and bewilderment cried out, "What? Swamiji, what are you asking me to do? This is the likeness of our Maharaja. How can I do such a thing?" "Be it so," said the Swami, "but the Maharaja is not bodily present in this photograph. This is only a piece of paper. It does not contain his bones and flesh and blood. It does not speak or behave or move in any way as does the Maharaja. And yet all of you refuse to spit on it, because you see in this photo the shadow of the Maharaja's form. Indeed, in spitting upon the photo, you feel that you insult your master, the prince himself. Turning to the Maharaja, he continued, "See, Your Highness, though this is not you in one sense, in another sense, it is you. That was why your devoted servants were so perplexed when I asked them to spit upon it. It has a shadow of you. It brings you in their minds. One glance at it makes them see you in it. Therefore, they look upon it with as much respect as they do upon your own person. Thus it is with the devotees who worship stone and metal images of gods and goddesses. It is because an image brings to their minds their chosen deity, or some special form and attribute of the divinity, and helps them to concentrate, that the devotees worship God in an image. They do not worship the stone or the metal as such. Everyone, O Maharaja, is worshiping the same one God, who is the Supreme Spirit, the soul of pure knowledge. And God appears to all according to their understanding and their representation of Him." After that, the Maharaja basically folded his hands and said, "You opened my eyes, O Swami Vivekananda, to understanding why idol worship should not be shunned." So that was a great teaching, in my opinion. Another one was a part of his speech during the 1893 Parliament of World Religions. So just a few verses from it. So he said, if there is ever to be a universal religion, it must be one which will have no location in place or time, which will be infinite, like the God it will preach, and whose sun will shine upon the followers of Krishna and Christ, on saint and sinners alike, which will not be Brahminic or Buddhistic, Christian or Mohammedan, but the sum total of all these, and still have infinite space for development, which in its Catholicity will find a place for every human being, from the lowest groveling savage, not far removed from the brute, to the highest man towering by the virtues of his head and heart almost above humanity. It will be a religion which will have no place for persecution or intolerance in its polity, which will recognize divinity in every man and woman, and whose whole scope, whose whole force will be centered in aiding humanity to realize its own true divine nature. And the last thing I wanted to read, the history of the world is the history of a few men who had faith in themselves. That faith calls out the divinity within. You fail only when you do not strive sufficiently to manifest infinite power. As soon as a man loses faith in himself, death comes. Believe first in yourself and then in God. A handful of strong men will move the world. It is the salvation of others that you must seek. And even if you have to go to hell in working for others, that is worth more than to gain heaven by seeking your own salvation. So that really speaks to how selfless and what type of a karma yogi in the truest sense that Swami Vivekananda was. And I highly recommend all of you who don't know much about Swami Vivekananda just to take just this little scratching of the surface that we've just done, a step forward and try to learn more about him. And I'm sure that'll inspire all of you to not just be proud of what he accomplished, but also wake up, as he said in this book also. He said, awaken. So we should all wake up this karma yogi spirit within ourselves and think for others.
Absolutely. He was truly a fascinating figure. I'm so glad that I had the chance to learn more about him.
Now we are pretty much coming to the end of our episode here, but I wanted to end this on a very interesting sort of like reviewing our first season, which consisted of 17 episodes, like I said. And I had the good fortune of receiving throughout that year, some feedback and, some idea of who I personally know that are consistently listening to this podcast. And I really want to thank them from the bottom of my heart and from my teammates. And, I reached out to them and I asked Vikram and Christiane to do the same and to get some feedback as to specifically which one of these episodes, one or maybe a few more, that they could name as their favorites and why. So we're going to do this in 3 rounds. So round 1 is going to be from those who were just listeners. Round 2 is going to be the feedback from our guests who joined us. The challenge for them was pick one of the episodes that you were actually not the guest of. So I just kind of wanted to throw a little bit of a curveball at them. And then we'll come to us 3 as the hosts in round 3. So we'll start with round 1. And Christiane, I'd like for you to go first with the feedback that you received, and I'd like you to actually maintain a tally, if you can, of the episodes that were mentioned. Just for fun, let's see which one was the most popular, if you will.
Absolutely. This should be super interesting. Okay, so I received feedback from 2 of our listeners, and the first listener said, quote, coming from an academic background, I thoroughly enjoyed the 2 episodes featuring Professor B.N. Hebar. So that's episode 9 on Jad Darshanas and episode 13 on Vedanta. They provided me with a clear baseline understanding of important Vedic concepts I hadn't encountered before. His deep scholarship, clarity of thought, and direct teaching approach made the learning experience especially rewarding. Then I received another set of feedback from a different listener that said, quote, Divine Discoveries is a rare and distinctive podcast. I especially enjoyed episode 2 on religion and spirituality, which was explored with both depth and humility. The hosts approached the subject with genuine curiosity rather than prescription, inviting listeners to reflect on their own spiritual journeys rather than simply react.
Yeah, I think, for the listeners I asked, for my family and friends, there was interestingly a similar trend, which is that they loved the episode that was about Lord Krishna and his pastimes. In particular, what they loved was that there were some stories there that they didn't know the nuances of that, which the episode covered. So that was one thing. But more than that, they just loved the fact that it was stories that were being shared, stories that they can take away and they can think about. And one of the interesting comments that I got was that listening to those stories sparked a further bhakti, further devotion feeling within them, because oftentimes when you go to the temple, you pray to God, you see the statue, you see the picture, and you do that, but you don't think too much about what they have done. And I think that our listeners felt that episode put some of those stories and leelas into perspective. So at least 4 or 5 people told me that was their favorite. So that's what I heard.
Wow. So 4 or 5. So this is really going to skew Lord Krishna's episode. Okay. Very cool. Thank you.
Wonderful. That's great feedback. So I'm going to go ahead and share the feedback that I received. Amol Gupta from Gaithersburg, Maryland. He's a good friend of mine. I really enjoyed Divine Discoveries, a podcast that primarily draws from Hindu and Vedic traditions, yet beautifully shines a light on the shared spiritual essence across many religions. What stands out most is its genuine interfaith approach, exploring parallels between diverse faiths with warmth and respect. A perfect example is the season 1 finale, where host Prat Pai teams up with guest co-host Sangeeta Narayan, a Montessori school teacher, singer, and children's book author, to delve into the histories of Christmas and Hanukkah alongside celebrating Bhagavad Gita Jayanti, having a co-host bringing fresh perspective while tying these celebrations together under the theme One Light, Many Colors, highlights the podcast's commitment to unity and mutual discovery across traditions. It's refreshing, educational, and uplifting. So thank you, Amol, for those kind words. And then another friend of mine, Arvind Kamath from Raleigh, North Carolina. On the favorite episode, I would say it's episode 7, Animal Avatars of Lord Vishnu. Coming from a town called Mulki in India, where Lord Narsimha is worshipped religiously by everyone in the town. I have grown up visiting the temple regularly, and even now, when I go to India, I don't miss out on praying to Lord Narsimha. But to know a lot more about this avatar of Vishnu, it felt more close to heart. And Lord Ganesha, the episode number 12, was also one of my favorites. My mother, Chandrika Pai from Germantown, Maryland. It's a very nice spiritual podcast that you all are doing. Out of all these episodes, I liked a couple of episodes that I've learned new stories. The first one is Ganesh Chaturthi, so the Ganesha episode. And the second one is Devi Navratri. Both the times, the guests who have told nice stories and their own lifetime experiences of the festivals during their childhood in India. And that really reminded me of my own younger days in India. Looking forward to listening to more and more interesting spiritual stories in your next season of episodes. Then this couple who's a great devotees of Guruji, their names are Jayama and Nagendra. They were really like grandparent-like figures for me, and I've always picked their brain when it comes to their memories of Guruji. So they have this to say. Dear Prat, I wish your new season of Divine Discoveries podcast discourse is a great success. I hope your project produces more intellectual discourses with genuine philosophical thoughts this year. As you know, I liked Mr. Hebbar's episode on the Shad Darshanas. That episode gave me a full intellectual satisfaction because it contained the true philosophy of India. As a matter of fact, I have written about the Shad Darshanas in one of my books also. So that's very nice. Thank you for the feedback. My godmother, one of Guruji's wonderful disciples, Karuna, or Kathy Pruse, who lives in Baden, Pennsylvania. Looking back over the various podcasts, it was difficult to single out a few, but here they are. Episode number 9, once again, the Shad Darshanas, and episode number 13 with Professor Hebbar, which is Vedanta 101, those are the ones I so enjoyed because of his knowledge of the Shad Darshanas and Sankhya philosophy in episode 9. And in episode 13, he returned to discuss the Brahma Sutras. These are 2 episodes that I plan to listen to again. The professor reminds me so much of our esteemed professor of religious studies at Wayne State University in Detroit in the 1970s. His name was Professor T.K. Venkateshwara. He was present at numerous of Guruji's satsangs and pujas in private homes around the Detroit area when we ran the Detroit Temple of Cosmic Religion. He wrote the introduction to several of Guruji's books, and listening to Professor Hebbar reminds me of those glorious days so much. Episode number 10 was also a favorite. I thoroughly enjoyed Janardhan Das's story. He's such an ardent devotee, so dedicated and knowledgeable. I cannot believe that he has thousands of shaligrams and is knowledgeable about scriptures and puja, much more disciplined than we are. He also knew Guruji and has a living guru that I enjoyed hearing about. So thank you, Karuna, for that wonderful feedback. Meghana Chakravarti, a good friend of ours from Alpharetta, Georgia. I would like to thank you and your team for spreading love, wisdom, and spirituality as we look inward to find peace during these turbulent times. In general, I look forward to the portions of the podcast where you share stories about your childhood and keep the listeners engaged through storytelling. These stories are so relatable and nostalgic, and I always feel a sense of renewed energy after listening to the podcast. I love how you share excerpts from your Guruji's teachings towards the end of the podcast. My favorite episodes have to be on Lord Ganesha, the avatars of Lord Vishnu, Goddess Durga, which is the Navratri one, and Vedanta 101. Learning about Ganesha's parts and the symbolism behind each of them was enlightening. I have since taught my kids to recite Ganesha Shloka, Vakratunda Mahakaya to be specific, when they feel nervous or at the time of embarking on something new. I now have some foundational understanding on Vedanta after listening to the Vedanta 101 podcast episode. Professor Hebbar broke down complicated concepts into easy to understand and practical application of them in everyday life. Learning about the Shad Darshanas and how they form a path towards attaining moksha was my favorite part of the episode. My key learning is that we do not need to follow or do anything just because we are told to do so, but in the process of learning about it, the rationale and science behind the worshiping will expand our knowledge and lead us towards our spiritual journey. Rohit Ulpe, he lives in Urbana, Maryland. Hi, Prat, Christiane, and Vikram. We have met Prat and his family through the Chinmaya Mission Frederick chapter. I was hooked onto the podcast after Prat shared it one of the days last year, and since then, this has been one of my favorite podcasts, and I'm happy to share that. I have heard all of the episodes of the first season. All of the episodes have been very informative, educational, and it brought back some good memories. The beauty of this podcast is that it not only explores the various facets of our Sanatana Dharma, but it also shared great wisdom of other faiths like Judaism. Though we have heard a lot of the stories of some of the prominent Hindu deities or gods time over time, it was very enlightening. I loved all the episodes, but some of the episodes which left a deep impression were episode number 9, Shadadarshana, with Professor Hebbar. I liked this episode because prior to now, I was not aware of the 6 systems of salvation. I learned that these 6 are equally valid ways of attaining salvation. Episode number 11, Lord Krishna. This episode was very informative as the DD team went over the Leelas of Bhagwan Krishna. I knew about the significance of Puri Jagannath Temple, but what I came to know from this episode was that Puri Temple is where the unburnt heart of Lord Krishna resides, and that is within the wooden idol of Lord Jagannath. I'm looking forward to the new season. Good luck to the team. And the last 2 we have is Usha Sarma, my aunt from Raleigh, North Carolina. My thoughts regarding your podcast episodes 2025. Congratulations on finishing the first year successfully. Presentations have markedly improved from episodes 1 to 17. I loved episode number 14, Durga Shakti Unleashed. It was excellent. I love that you start every episode with a prayer. I loved your guests, Smita and Jaya. I have never been to Bengal or Bihar, but their description of customs and celebrations around Navratri from each of those regions took us there, literally. Most importantly, I loved Christiane's research and description of Kushmanda, which was so beautiful. Thank you for getting us interested again in our heritage and spirituality. I love the Christmas episode as well. I love how you end each episode with your grandfather, Guruji's preachings. He was wise and learned guru. 50 plus years ago, he was discussing Jesus Christ as a Yuga Purusha, a man representing an entire era, if you will, nicely tying Christianity to Hindu Dharma and mythology. Loved his voice. Thank you for doing this for our future generations. And Miss Vidya Pai, who happens to share my last name and my address. She's my wife, my lovely wife, from Clarksburg, Maryland. So, hello, Team DD. It would be so unfair to pick just one episode, as every one of them are truly amazing and inspiring. Thank you so much for all the hard work, efforts, and dedication towards spreading spirituality, knowledge through this medium. Even if this changes just one person's perspective of life or on life, that means you've already achieved something truly meaningful. With the grace of God and Guru, may you continue to reach new heights and bring us many more beautiful conversations to listen to and learn from. Thank you. On that note, from my most favorite episode is number 6. I really loved the Cosmic Creation and Time episode. I've always thought about creation mostly from a scientific point of view, so it was surprising and really interesting to hear how those ideas connect with ancient scriptures too. The Jewish perspective, the Christian connections, and especially the Hindu viewpoint gave me a whole new way of looking at it. It honestly helped answer some big questions I've had for a long time about how the universe was created and how everything evolved. It also gave me perspective about how and when the universe was created. Loved every bit of the information I gathered through this episode. So that brings round 1 of just the listeners' feedback to an end. Thank you so much to all our great listeners and for such words of encouragement for us to take forward in doing, hopefully, better work in season 2. So here's round 2, where we received guest feedback. So our very first guest, if you remember, was Gokul Pai. He lives in Northern Virginia. So he spoke to us about the Mahakumbh Mela. He says, "It was a pleasure listening to your podcasts, and congratulations for completing season 1 and looking forward for more episodes in season 2. One episode that truly stayed with me is Durga Shakti Unleashed, 9 Nights to Victory. It beautifully unpacked the deeper spiritual cultural layers of Navratri, especially the 4 Navratris, Magha, Chaitra, Sharad, and Ashada. I personally observe all 4 through various rituals, so listening to this episode felt both familiar and refreshing. It helped reconnect me with practices I already follow, while also introducing perspectives I hadn't fully explored before. As I'm writing this in mid-January, with Magha Navratri beginning shortly, January 19th, which was yesterday actually, it naturally brought back memories of my travels to India for the Mangalore Car Festival, Ratha Saptami as it's called, on the 7th day of Magha Navratri, and Bhishmashtami on the 8th, marking Bhishma's departure during Uttarayana. While these weren't directly part of the episode, the discussion organically evoked those associations. What made the episode especially powerful was its explanation of the 9 forms of Durga, the richness of Shakti traditions, and the cultural depth behind Durga Puja celebrations. The references to the Shakta version of the Ramayana and insights from the Kalika Purana were particularly enlightening. It felt less like listening to a podcast and more like receiving a guided spiritual reminder, grounded, insightful, and deeply uplifting. Truly a blessed listen. Another episode that deeply resonated with me was Vedanta 101 with Professor B.N. Hebbar. I remember telling Pratt, both when we met in person and over the phone, that this episode stood out for its depth and clarity. Among all the episodes, this was one of the most intellectually and spiritually touching. The conversation offered a lucid introduction to the major schools of Vedanta and their philosophical foundations without oversimplifying them. It touched upon profound subjects, each a complete philosophy in itself, such as the Brahma Sutras, the Upanishads, and the broader Vedantic doctrines that have shaped Indian thought for centuries. What I appreciated most was how the episode managed to convey the seriousness and richness of these traditions while remaining accessible and engaging. Listening to it sparked a renewed curiosity and aspiration in me. When time permits, I hope to study some of these texts more deeply, especially the Brahma Sutras and the principal Upanishads. This episode wasn't just informative, it served as a gentle invitation to go deeper into Vedantic inquiry and self-reflection. Wow. Maya Kini Rao, also from Northern Virginia, who was a guest in our 5th episode for Ram Navami, dedicated to Lord Ram, where they spoke about their personal visit to Ayodhya, where the Ram Mandir is. While all the episodes are really great to listen and frequently relearn basic and new facts about Hinduism, the 2 that stood out to me are episode number 14, where you and the team did a deep dive into both the festival and aspects and the real meaning behind Navratri and Dashera through the manifestations of Goddess Durga or Shakti. Several facets that were not fully known to me, as well as differences in celebration in different parts of India by your other guests, made it very enlightening. Episode number 12 is one I really enjoyed because it really went into depth into all the facets of Lord Ganesha, and the tape that you played of Guruji providing further background and context around the symbolism of his visage made it super enchanting to listen and recommend to my friends. Sangeeta Narayan, who was a guest in our season finale, she lives in Ellicott City. So she says, I think me coming across the Divine Discoveries podcast was itself a part of some divine planning. One of my most favorite episodes of all that I have heard would be the Guru Purnima episode, where Sri Janardhan Das was a guest speaker. To say I was blown away by this gentleman's story would be an understatement. A person born in a Catholic faith and his journey to becoming a practicing Vaishnavite is nothing short of a miracle in itself. The way his life was put in order by some divine timing was amazing. It was clear that he was meant to be in this religion when he became a vegetarian, even before he learned about this practice. Definitely a podcast worth listening. Another proof that we are all one and headed towards the same destination, irrespective of the path we choose. Wonderful. Thank you, Maya and Sangeeta, for such wonderful feedback. And lastly, Smita Raj, who joined us for, I think, about 2 episodes, lives in Gaithersburg, Maryland. I loved mostly all of the Divine Discoveries podcasts, as I get to hear not just spiritualism, but broadens my knowledge to dig deep and to take a deep dive into unknown facts and life's lessons. Love the introductory speech of Swamiji or Guruji, the invocation shloka by Prat, and the way the topic of the series progresses. Out of all the series, these 2 episodes interested me the most. The first is episode number 7 about the animal incarnations or avatars of Lord Vishnu in Hindu mythology, especially the ones that are depicted as animals or part animal figures. This topic is part of the broader Vaishnavism tradition, which teaches that Vishnu, one of the principal deities of Hinduism, descends in different forms, avatars, to protect dharma or cosmic order and defeat evil forces. These animal avatars are symbolic. They represent how the divine intervenes in the world in forms most suited to the particular cosmic challenge at that time. The second episode that I liked is episode number 12 about Lord Ganesha. This year, 2026, is also the year of Lord Ganesha, if you will, and I loved the way Swamiji breaks down the sacred symbolism behind Lord Ganesha's form, appearance, and mythological stories, aiming to help listeners understand the deeper spiritual lessons encoded in his depiction. Not just the stories alone, and from my childhood always loved Ganesha stories and always loved elephants. So with that, we come to the end of round 2, where our guests have provided their wonderful and such kind feedback, which really inspires us and really gives us so much, wonderful encouragement to continue doing what we're doing. What do you guys think, Christiane and Vikram? I mean, this is so heartwarming. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, it's amazing to hear the impact the podcast is having and the various things that folks are taking away from it, and the guests who bring so much themselves to each of our episodes, to find them that they're also listening to other aspects of the podcast and finding it interesting and enjoyable and spurring further conversation. I think it's humbling, and I think it's great to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love hearing all this feedback too. We come on here and talk for hours, right? But it's not a dialogue with our listeners. So it's good to get all of this back. So thanks, guys, and especially Prat, to all your contacts for providing all that.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you to all the people who provided both of you feedback as well. And now we're coming to the final round where the 3 of us speak about our favorite episodes. For me, anyway, it was very difficult because, there's 17 of them and I was part of all of them. But I've asked Christiane and Vikram, who unfortunately could not be part of all of these episodes, to actually highlight if they would like to speak about maybe one episode that they were part of, but I would like them to speak about one that they were not part of. So that I'm just kind of trying to throw a little curveball challenge to kind of make it more interesting. So Christiane, why don't you go first?
Yeah, sure. So the one I was not part of that I really liked was the final episode 17 on Hanukkah and Christmas. And, sometimes it's nice to hear from someone who isn't part of the faith tradition, right? Speak about it. And I actually learned quite a few things, Pratt, from that episode, even though I come from a Judeo-Christian background and I've celebrated both these holidays extensively. I learned some things. And Pratt, I really appreciated how you went into the history of Hanukkah, because I think oftentimes in the Hanukkah story that's overlooked, and the focus is on the oil that burnt for 8 days in the temple. And while, yes, that was miraculous, the larger miracle was that this tiny Jewish army, the Maccabean army, defeated a mighty Greek Seleucid Empire's army. That was really the miracle. And the Jewish people were able to reclaim their heritage in the temple and continue to practice their faith. And then the one that I did participate in that I really loved was Janardana Das. I really was very touched and inspired by his story. It really resonated with me. And I loved how open he was. It was like he was extremely open. There's nothing like hearing about a personal spiritual journey. And his was completely just fascinating. And it gave me the chills how he came to find Guruji and how they connected. And it was just incredible. So anybody who wants to hear something very raw and very real and very personal, I would definitely recommend. That was episode 10 with Janardana Das.
Wonderful. Vikram, before you say anything, sorry to stop you, but I do want to mention, because Christian just spoke about Janardhan Das, it actually is his birthday today. So I'd like to wish Janardhan Das on behalf of the team of Divine Discoveries a very, very happy and blessed birthday.
Happy birthday. I think for me, in terms of the episodes, it's really funny because I had the exact same two that Christiane mentioned. I was unable to join the episode, right before the holidays, which is the one that Christiane mentioned. And I think, in that episode, what resonated with me was, of course, I don't know much about Hanukkah. So that was a big learning curve. But what I also found interesting was the similarities between Lord Krishna and Jesus Christ. I think that that's something that, I didn't really pay attention to that before. And it's fascinating to see the commonalities there. And that just, leads me to double down on what Swami Vivekananda said, which is that we're all trying to get to the same destination. There's just different ways to get there. The fact that, these two spiritual entities have commonalities means that the source of this is common.
Right.
That sure, there's some differences here and there, but there has to be some reason why there are so many commonalities.
Absolutely.
And so I think that realization and then understanding other festivals is something that I enjoy, and that for me, that episode was the one that I wasn't part of that I enjoyed. And in terms of the one that I was part of, it was also the Guru one. I think that our discussion in that episode was very candid in the sense that we took a concept which seems very simple, but we really deconstructed it and really hopefully helped our listeners understand kind of what constitutes a guru, and where are there also some red flags in that, in terms of some people that are self-proclaimed. There's people that are truly enlightened and truly have that knowledge, and those are the people that are humble, and their only goal is to impart their wisdom to others. You can tell the difference between who is a genuine one and who isn't. And I think it was important for us to talk about that and deconstruct that. So I think that episode was an important one. And it's also a good one into, hopefully having all of our listeners think about those whom have been their teachers in life and whom have guided them, and, develop further an appreciation for them. Because without wisdom, without guidance, we're just an empty shell. So that's what I would say are my favorite episodes.
Wow. Thank you, guys. I didn't expect the same two to be mentioned by both of you, but that's very interesting.
Look at that. Uh-huh.
I'm curious
Pratt,
to see.
Oh, sorry.
I'm curious.
We need a tiebreaker. We presently have a 4-way tie going. So I don't know which episode you're going to pick here, Pratt, but there's some pressure.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to break that tie because based on what I've been hearing and the one that I was going to say is my favorite, I don't think I'm going to help break any ties. But which 4 are we talking about here?
Okay, so episode 9 with Professor Hebar Shad Darshanaz, episode 11 on Lord Krishna, episode 12 on Ganesha, and episode 14 on Navrati.
Okay. Well, there is one thing I forgot to mention, and my wife Vidya thought that she should only mention one. So she said cosmic creation and time. But right before I came downstairs to start this episode, she asked me, you only said one, right? I said, no, you could have mentioned more than that, because other feedback I received did mention multiple episodes. So she said then I would add to that episode number 5 on Lord Rama and episode 11 on Sri Krishna. So she added those two at the last minute.
That would put Sri Krishna over the top.
Okay, so there we go.
So there we go. We have a winner.
I couldn't break the tie, but my wife came to the rescue, I guess.
Excellent.
But, I thought about it. It was really difficult, as you would imagine, being part of 17 unique different topics and some historic stuff, some mythological, some Puranic stories and scientific episodes and intellectual episodes and all that stuff that people have mentioned. But for me, I thought about which one of these episodes is something that practically is something that I can apply every day. Which one of these touches me, speaks to me in terms of how I can utilize it every day, right? Which one of these? And I landed on number 16, sweet 16. Give thanks and realize grace. And that's, how in the Bhagavad Gita, especially the one, where I was reading the purports of Pramod Uncle, where it said, how we need to come to a point where our desires need to be reduced and, materially, and to the point where, we don't really desire much at all materially, right? How do we get to that point? It's really being thankful and grateful daily in some sort of practice, just like he mentioned, even if it's 3 minutes a day that you're praying, and that complete surrender of the good and bad of that day is what we spoke about in that episode also, is daily doing some sort of a practice consistently where we give thanks in our own ways through our hearts to the divine, to God. And then, it's interesting how Guruji in that episode said that in order for us to even be prayerful, for our heart to be prayerful, God has already given us the grace for us to be in that mode. But then once we're in that mode and we do it more, which is a daily practice, right, of being thankful for what we have, as a result, our desires will reduce, because if we're already happy with what we have, then we won't desire for more. And the grace that we're seeking will increase. So that's the realization I came to. And I thought that one really touched me. I guess if I had to single out one, that would be the one. But all in all, I just wanted this segment to be fun. And it was a way for us to learn from you listeners what you all are listening to and what you're enjoying. What are we doing right? Please also let us know if we could do better in some way. That's what we want to do, is continue to progress and be better. And, like Vikram said, we've been sharing whatever we are researching and learning with all of you, and hoping that you guys are all picking something out of that and hopefully benefiting your spiritual journey. So thank you all for such wonderful feedback. Vikram and Christiane, thank you so much for being my castmates through season 1. And I couldn't have asked for better partners. So I really want to thank you both for being such a wonderful and major part of this project as we embark on the second season.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been a great outlet to express, I'm sure I'm also speaking for Christiane when I say this, what we feel spiritually. It's a great platform to let it out. And I think even more than that, it's a great platform to find ways to connect with others like us, except that are searching their spirituality and trying to find the best ways to connect and the best things to look for. Because, we've been attuned for a while, but there are folks out there that are keen to find that way. And if our podcast helps guide and inform folks on that, or inspires them, then that's more than what we could ask for. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this.
Absolutely. Likewise, everything that Vikram just said. And Prat, thank you for all of your hard work and behind the scenes tech work and leadership and commitment, etc. It's been an honor, and I have learned a tremendous amount. during this past year. And I can't wait to learn more with each of you. So thank you.
Thank you. And, all glories to Guruji, Sadhguru Sant Keshav Das Ji, whose clippings you all have heard in every episode. But we hope to continue, to speak on very interesting topics in this upcoming season. If any of you have any suggestions, please do let us know. Thank you all. May you all be well. Happy New Year and Om Shanti.